Well, hi. Welcome to the webinar. Officially, I'm Jason Jones, Service Line Leader of Cresa Remote Advisory Services, and I'm joined today by Steve Ike, Senior Vice President at Cresa. Welcome to the webinar. When the healthcare crisis forced shelter-in-place and stay-at-home orders in mid-March of 2020, no one could have known that an entirely new era in how and where organizations work and collaborate began. Here's what a few CEOs had to say. One CEO said, "We're going to be the most forward-leaning company on remote work at our scale." That was Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook. Another CEO said, "Office centricity is over. We cannot go back to the way things were. This isn't a choice. This is the future." That was Toby Lutke, CEO of Shopify, a multi-billion-dollar online shopping platform. And another said, "I have a policy in place where no one is required to come into the office. Everyone is enabled to work from wherever they want, where they can be the most productive." That was Bill McDermott, CEO of ServiceNow. And then finally, one C-suite person said, "We believe the way of working in the future will be one in which working virtually will be the new normal, at least for most of the work we lead." That was Suresh Kumar, CTO of Walmart. But not all the responses were so positive about remote work. Another CEO said, "What does burnout look like? What does mental health look like? What does that connectivity and the community building look like?" That was Satya Nadella, CEO of Microsoft. And even those who were embracing an aggressive remote strategy recognized that remote work has its limitations. Although Bill McDermott was strongly promoting remote work, he also said, "However, we acknowledge that certain jobs work better in teams, and certain people are in environments where they need an office to go to get a little peace of mind." But those were the reactions early in the pandemic. As time wore on and employees and their managers settled in to a new way of working, the cultural acceptance of remote work took hold, so much so that most surveys today show that anywhere from 70% up to 80% of all office-based knowledge workers, that's people who use a computer most of the day, want the flexibility to work from home part-time going forward, typically 2 or 3 days a week. But this brings new challenges. And another CEO quote. Sid Sijbrandij is the CEO of GitLab, which is an open source software firm that has never had an office since its start in 2014. It is a 100% remote company and has grown to 1,300 employees in 66 countries. When asked about the blend of working remotely and working in the office, Sid said, "If you try to do hybrid, you will have an A team and a B team, those in the office and those deprived of information and career opportunities." He also warned, two ways of working is very, very hard, and companies should not do it lightly. It's okay to say back to the office or all remote, but hybrid can turn out really bad. Now, I want us to pause for a moment to really ponder what Sid said about this binary choice between either remote only or office only. Sid suggests this choice because, according to him, hybrid can turn out really bad. But we have to remember the new reality is that 70% of the workforce wants a part-time combination of working from home and the office. And the other remaining 30% are split evenly between wanting full-time remote and full-time office, which means if you only offer one or the other, you will limit yourself to attracting only 15% of the workforce. 85% of the workforce will look elsewhere. This is why we believe that organizations are going to figure out the hybrid approach, offering some combination for working in an office and working from home, whether full-time or part-time. But what is the right blend for your organization? What are the criteria for a successful strategy to make sure you're not missing anything? And how do you ensure that you're headed down the right path? Well, to answer these questions, you need a plan. You need a plan to blend remote and office. Because right now, everyone has a remote plan. But for many, it's a short-term response to the health crisis that doesn't involve blending remote with the office. And that's the rub. That's the challenge. But it's also an opportunity. So, if you're contemplating a hybrid work arrangement that allows employees to work at the office and at home, and if you're interested in answering such questions as, well, what questions should we be asking? And is there a framework to evaluate a hybrid workforce strategy? And what is the roadmap to navigate to the right blend of remote and office? Then this webinar is for you. As I mentioned, I'm Jason Jones, and I'm joined today by my colleague, Steve Ike. I've been at Cresa for 18 years, originally as a real estate advisor, but now exclusively leading two of our service lines, Cresa Technology Advisory Services and Remote Advisory Services. Steve has over 25 years of experience providing workforce strategy expertise to companies like General Electric, Macy's, Procter & Gamble, and Kimberly-Clark, to name a few. Today, we'll have a 45-minute presentation with some Q&A at the end. We'll record the webinar and send a copy out afterwards. Please ask questions via the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen, and make comments too along the way. Just a thought or an opinion. Please share it with us. We'll get to them during the Q&A period. Today, we'll address context for where we are in the timeline of the COVID-19 experience from a work perspective, the benefits and challenges of a hybrid workforce, its key elements, and a roadmap to build a sustainable workforce strategy. So we start with context for where we are in the timeline of COVID-19 as it relates to workforce strategy. There are three phases in this experience. The first was the immediate phase. People were forced to vacate their offices and work from home. Everyone did whatever was necessary just to keep the lights on, keep business running. Phase two is the endure phase. We've been enduring, leveraging technology, modifying workflows, and working to maintain culture. And all things considered, it's gone pretty well for most organizations. Phase three will be the sustain and compete phase. This is the post-COVID phase. Organizations will work to sustain a new way of working that leverages what they've learned about remote work while recapturing all of the benefits of a shared central office, which should make them more competitive than they were pre-COVID, if they can get the hybrid blend right. But to get from phase two to phase three, we have to go through a transition. And that is where we are right now. Or should I say, that's where we should be right now. Forward-thinking leaders are there, taking advantage of this time to invest and prepare for the future, because they know that transition is key. But while forward-thinking leaders are actively engaged in transition planning, near-term thinkers are not. And the danger for them is to be caught flat-footed when health restrictions lift and they have unimpeded access to their office. That's when they will be forced to make decisions about who works where and when, or at a higher level, decide who among their employees will make that decision. They'll also need to be able to support their workforce that's moving fluidly from home to office by using technology, human resources policies, and work processes. It's going to be a real challenge, and we don't want to see leaders rushed to approve plans and make decisions they're not prepared for. But the question, how do we transition, is actually premature. First, we must ask, well, what exactly are we transitioning to? And why do we want to go there? What are its benefits? And finally, what are the inherent challenges? Then let's talk about how to get there. For the first three questions, today, we will provide a framework for thinking about the workforce and the workplace in a new light. And for the question about transition, we'll describe a roadmap to help guide you. But to start, we have to ask a seminal question. This is the question that forward-thinking organizations like Facebook, ServiceNow, Shopify, and Walmart have already been asking themselves. And it's a question that we suggest you too ask yourself. And that question is, what is the right hybrid workforce strategy specific to us that will minimize expenses minimize expenses and the threat to business continuity, while at the same time maximize productivity, talent attraction and retention, and financial results? So it is these key business drivers that inform our answer to that question of what exactly are we transitioning to? Well, we want to transition to workforce strategies that achieve these goals. And in order to evaluate those workforce strategies, we start by understanding their benefits and their challenges. So let's take a look. The benefits of a hybrid workforce strategy combine the best of remote work and the best of the shared office. Now, at the top of the list for remote work is the reduced commute and fewer interruptions. These two factors alone increase the annual productivity of each half-time remote worker, that's 2.5 days per week, by 16 business days a year, which equates to $6,400 per employee per year. In addition, remote work reduces the expense of real estate, employee turnover, and absenteeism. And reduced personal costs for employees average about $4,000 per year by saving on commute, clothes, and food. There are environmental benefits of reduced carbon emissions, and employees consistently state that their work-life balance is better. Now, on the other hand, the benefits of the office are time-proven, but have also really crystallized during the pandemic. Highlights include in-person collaboration and ideation, team building, socialization, mentoring and training, complex problem solving, serendipitous moments, and ad hoc meetings. You know, leaning over to your neighbor and saying, hey, you got a minute? Now, one benefit of both remote work and the shared office is the ability to recruit and retain talent. With 70% of employees wanting a hybrid workforce experience, most organizations will have to offer both a remote option and an office option to recruit and retain the best and the brightest. Another key benefit of both remote work and the office is that together, and only together, they meet one of the key workforce desires that has been ignited by the remote work experience. This desire is so powerful that it is shaping workforce strategy around the globe, and subsequently workspace design and real estate strategy. And that key desire is freedom. The freedom to choose. First, the freedom to choose when work is done. Employees want to work at any time of the day while blending in personal tasks or even recreation. They no longer want to be held to a rigid 9-to-5 industrial age of punching the clock. The sentiment is, measure my output, not my input, and give me the freedom to decide how I schedule my day to get work done. Some are even asking for a more flexible schedule, perhaps even a 4-day work week. And second, there's a very strong desire to choose where work is done. First, there's the simple geography of choosing among home, office, or some other location, but also employees want to choose among different environments inside of the shared office that are built for specific purposes. Examples include areas designed for focus work, other areas for teamwork, and others for socialization, training, coffee bars, video conferencing rooms, etc. Employees want options and variety, and ultimately, the freedom to choose which location they determine is best to accomplish their work. Satisfying this desire for freedom brings many benefits, the first of which is employee satisfaction. And greater employee satisfaction leads to greater engagement. Greater engagement leads to lower turnover and a whole host of ensuing benefits. Less absenteeism, better customer engagement, which we know leads to lower customer churn, which in turn yields a higher customer lifetime value, which means higher profits. Now you may be wondering, what is the asterisk for? These are the things that are quantifiable. You can measure them. And if they go up and continue up, then your hybrid workforce strategy is working. But if they go down, then you may be suffering from some of the special challenges that a hybrid workforce begins. Individually, the challenges of remote work and the shared office have been experienced by us all. But what has not yet been experienced on a broad scale are the challenges associated with the hybrid workforce model that blends remote with office. And we're going to highlight 3 challenging scenarios that organizations could be faced with in a post-COVID hybrid workforce environment. The first challenge is the potential for disparity between teams. Let's take Team A. Team A has a manager who embraces a hybrid workforce. She is on board with the concept of giving you freedom to choose where and when you feel you can be the most productive. Periodically, she requires in-person meetings, but they're purposeful and well-run. She focuses on the output of your efforts, not the input of your time. Team members feel a strong spirit of freedom working for her. Then there's Team B. Team B has a manager who doubts the long-term effectiveness of a hybrid workforce. He is uncomfortable managing people he cannot see and requires in-office presence, although he does allow remote work 1 day of the week. When Team B looks at Team A, they feel constrained. So what's the outcome? Team B feels jealous and dispirited. They wonder, can I switch teams? Or worse, should I leave my job? If you're the VP overseeing these teams, what do you do? Now, another potential challenge is internal division within a hybrid team. In this scenario, we have in-office team members who are either full-time in the office or majority in the office. And then we have remote team members who are either full-time remote or majority remote. Now, if the boss spends most of her time in the office, then the in-office team members have proximity to her that remote members do not. This proximity may lead to real or perceived better career opportunities, choice assignments, promotions, etc., and better access to information. This is what Sid Sibrandy was talking about. Now, what's the upshot of this scenario? Remote team members feel undervalued and dispirited, teamwork is reduced, and they may wonder, can I switch teams? Or worse, should I leave this organization? Again, if you're the VP overseeing this team, what do you do? How do you prevent this scenario? Yet another challenge of the hybrid workforce regards how to accommodate multiple employee profiles. And by profiles, we mean how and when an employee chooses to work. For example, profile number 1 are employees who choose to work 3 days in the office and 2 days at home, or perhaps 2 days in the office and 3 days at home. Profile number 2 are in the office 100% of the time, but only work 4 days a week. And profile 3's default location is at home, but they attend periodic in-person team meetings and occasionally choose to drop in the office to work or socialize. The challenge is, how do you accommodate all of these profiles? From the perspective of human resource policy, measuring performance, ongoing training, establishing cultural norms, technology, cybersecurity, and developing a real estate strategy. Should you even allow all of these profiles? Or how far down the chain of command do you extend authority to make that decision? Which brings us to an audience participation question. We want to pause for just a moment to ask a question of you, and that is, what are your top 2 concerns with a hybrid workforce? As you look over the horizon post-COVID and unimpeded access to your shared central office, if some portion of your employees continue to work part-time from home, what are your concerns with that arrangement? Examples might be fairness for evaluations and promotions, morale and culture of hybrid teams. Obviously, if people feel things aren't fair, that's going to affect morale and culture. Will there be a redesign concern with your office space? Unexpected costs associated with this? Cybersecurity, collaboration issues, mentoring? There may be more, and this is just a representative list, but if you would, please type your thoughts into the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. And as importantly, please help us by considering the second question, which is, how is your organization addressing these concerns? Now, it may be that your organization is not just yet, but some of you may have already been preparing for some of these issues and you have great ideas that we could all benefit from. Please share, and we'll be sure to share responses at the end of the webinar, because your ideas could be really helpful to anyone who's facing the challenges of the hybrid workforce. See, these issues showcase the need for organizations to invest time right now, preparing for the future, brainstorming scenarios and possible solutions, building consensus among leaders, casting a vision among employees, and ultimately creating a hybrid workforce strategy that maximizes the opportunity to blend remote work with the shared office. So we'd really appreciate hearing from you what your concerns are and learning your ideas. Now, in our opinion, to create a successful strategy, you need a framework for developing the strategy. And interestingly, the framework to develop a successful workforce strategy can be built upon the same framework used to build a successful workplace strategy. The framework consists of 4 key elements, and we call it Workplace 2.0. This is the first of 2 key frameworks to help you evaluate a hybrid workforce strategy. The first element is talent. A workplace is created to attract and retain the best and the brightest. A workplace should also foster an organization's culture and leverage technology to drive productivity. And finally, there's the physical space itself. Now, before the pandemic, it was really only the shared central office that was utilized for employee engagement, productivity, and satisfaction. What's exciting and new is the concept of space being not only about the design and location of a shared office, but also offering the freedom to choose the best location, which drives employee engagement, productivity, and satisfaction. Workplace 2.0 will be different for each organization, each department, even each team and individual. There's no one right answer. But the good news is that you can use the key elements of the Workplace 2.0 paradigm to navigate to the right hybrid workforce strategy for your organization. So let's take them one at a time. The first is talent. You have to determine which job roles are appropriate for remote work and which job functions might be converted to virtual processes and virtual collaboration. This is one of the most important and often heard issues, concerns that we hear as we talk to organizations about their future workforce strategy. Next, you have to determine who has the personal aptitude for remote work. Not everyone who's in a job suitable for remote work is also a good fit for remote work long term. Personal assessments can help, especially when coupled with training, which leads to training for managers and employees. Many managers really have little experience leading a remote workforce, much less a hybrid workforce. They need training to better manage someone that they can't see, and then someone that they can see part of the time. In addition, the technology that enables remote work is constantly changing, and many employees simply don't know how to use the full suite of the technology that they already have. Finally, eligibility requirements set expectations and provide structure. Companies can use key performance indicators and performance evaluations to establish and maintain eligibility. Now, culture is the second key element. Many companies are concerned that remote work could change their corporate culture. And the fact is, remote work will have an effect on culture. Think about the personal connections that are enhanced in new ways. I mean, because of video conferencing, team members get to meet the kids, the pets, and even a view of the inside of coworkers' homes. Another aspect is trust. Companies must build trust both up and down the chain of command. Most important is to be consistent and follow through. People are trusted when they consistently demonstrate that they do what they say they're going to do. But it's hard to trust someone who may not yet trust you, and therefore it's leaders who have to take the initiative to trust their employees. Communication is next. Good communication, both formal and informal, is critical to keep employees motivated. And in a remote environment, a hybrid environment, it needs to be high quality and high frequency. In addition, leaders must find ways to communicate these bigger picture mission and goals so that remote employees can be informed and empowered to make independent, unsupervised decisions. Cultural norms. Part of any culture is establishing group norms, whether spoken or unspoken. And a best practice that you can employ is for teams to discuss and agree upon a short list of norms that will guide team behavior and build comfort as they move into this new, challenging hybrid workforce environment. For instance, examples would be setting certain days of the week as no meeting days, or no camera on days, or no email after a certain hour at night. Set a default time frame for meetings that's short, 15 minutes. Commit to not using the chat feature during video meetings to avoid distractions, and commit to turning on everyone's individual camera during an in-person meeting if a remote team member, someone who's distributed in another building or state even, is on video, so that they don't feel marginalized by not being in the room with everyone else. And that speaks to value and job security. Because they are out of sight, those employees who are working remotely at that time, they need to feel like valuable members of the team who are secure in their jobs, not at a disadvantage with coworkers who may spend more time at the office. And finally, there's socialization. Efforts to maintain relational bonds are even more important when you have employees working at a combination of home and the office and other locations and moving about. Now, on the left are just a few ideas to build and maintain relationships among hybrid team members that can be done remotely. The next element of the hybrid workforce strategy is technology that enables remote work. And for the technology element, I want to introduce my colleague, Steve Ike. As mentioned earlier, Steve has over 25 years of experience providing workforce strategy consulting to companies like General Electric, Macy's, Procter & Gamble, and Kimberly-Clark. Steve, I hand it over to you.
Thanks, Jason. And as we take a look at technology, it's really more than platforms and tools. It's a resource and an enabler that can be leveraged to create an on-demand work experience. And as we look at how, when, and where people work, whether it's remote, in the office, or a combination of these, communications and collaboration platforms are really the foundation for that purposeful interaction. Through real-time synchronous and non-real-time asynchronous, communications platforms can be used for anytime, anywhere, one number reach access across multiple devices. And when combined with a shared workspace, it allows people to meet, collaborate, and share work. In performance management, and really looking at elevating that productivity versus activity that Jason mentioned earlier, we focus on three key areas: building trust, empowering employees, and driving productivity. Addressing those concerns that managers have, where it started with, hey, if I can't see them, I can't manage them, to if I can measure, I can manage. And that helps make the shift from measuring tasks and activities to really measuring the output that Jason mentioned earlier. And in making that shift, performance management is a process, a system, and a set of tools that organizations use to measure and evaluate both corporate performance and employee performance, helping managers have meaningful conversations with employees, and providing that real-time access to information in a visual dashboard. In turn, this helps address the issues that we faced with that in-office versus remote and that tension, therefore providing consistent and measurable productivity, progress towards goals, and really helping to drive those business outcomes. As we get into document management, it's really an online library that we use tools like Dropbox, Google Drive, and SharePoint. Combined with management tools, they can be used to manage content, address security, version control, and distribution of documents and files. And through this, facilitating real-time, anytime, anywhere access for process, workflows, and document control. So 3 examples I'd like to share are: think about a loan process in a financial services institution, or a claims management process for an insurance agency, or in a law firm dealing with client matters and case files where we've got multiple people touching it across time. In short, these document management tools help really streamline workflows and address document control. And the 4th area, to me, is even more important today than ever before. More people are at home working on more connected devices, which really opens a window for hackers to get a chance to gain access to critical and secure information. It's often the most overlooked and underanalyzed area of remote work. Think about how many devices and people are connected in your home today. And the challenge with logically segmenting your work information from those non-work activities, items, and devices. This addresses both the technical side with wireless access, secure connectivity, intrusion detection, but the human factors of compliance, dealing with regulatory issues of payment card information, healthcare information, financial information, or personally identifiable information. And as we look at the physical aspect, Jason is working in a home where he's got the ability to have a locked door. But oftentimes you may be working in an apartment or a condo where you don't have that secure area to lock the door, secure a laptop, or separate yourself so no ears to hear or eyes can see. So when we look at cybersecurity and compliance, there are human factors and technical factors that need to be addressed. Jason, that's kind of the high level, and we'll get in more into some of the further discussion on how do we optimize that home office workspace and workflow as well. But thank you for letting me, get a word in on technology.
Absolutely, thank you. All right, let me get my this back up. So thank you. Final key element is the physical space itself. Now, to accommodate employees' desire for freedom of choice in where and when they must work, organizations must view the workplace no longer as a single shared location, but instead accommodate a network of flexible, convenient, and on-demand places. Employees want the option to choose a workplace location where they feel they'll be the most productive that day, or even just part of the day. And then when they are actually in the office, they want a similar choice. They want to be able to choose among different environments within the office where they feel they will be most effective for that specific task. And those environments and tasks will change throughout the day. We feel 3 general categories of space will be important in a hybrid workforce. These are the categories for you to keep in mind as you start to think about how do you design your space for the future. Now, the first is private collaboration space. This is where you'll work in person with others, but you'll be secluded from the activity and other employees in the office. Second is private individual space. This is where you'll work by yourself, isolated from others. And third is what we call open air space, which is a catch-all for any space where you can see and be seen by others. It's generally more socially oriented space, which allows for ad hoc conversations and serendipity, although you might focus well in these parts of the office. Now, for the home office, as a best practice, we recommend offering employees a stipend for home office furniture and IT equipment, which can be spent on any items the employee desires, with the exception of the laptop and docking station, which are standardized for the sake of IT efficiency. Otherwise, offer maximum freedom of choice. But at the same time, we recommend that you offer the option to purchase from a more limited selection of recommended furniture and technology. And this ability to choose both supports the desire for freedom while providing also a helpful reduction from what could be just an overwhelming number of options. So that's the 4 key elements, but we have a bonus key element. That's right, that's policy. We felt that a clear corporate policy is so important to the success of a hybrid workforce strategy that we included it as the fifth element. A clear policy is crucial for setting expectations. And as a leader, if you don't set expectations, your employees will set their own, and they will likely be different from yours. Hybrid workforce policies should address eligibility requirements, tools and resources the company will provide for home use, what the employee is expected to provide, and expectations for personal performance and participation. And finally, therefore, what constitutes disqualification. So we've discussed the key elements and some guidance on how to employ them, but we also feel it's important to show that many of these subjective elements are actually quantifiable. Now, this is a real example of a company we work with that had 500 employees and was interested in a portion to be remote. They ended up having 50 employees full-time and 60 that part-time remote work, which was 2 days a week on average. Real estate costs were reduced by $337,000. Productivity increased 20%, which reduced labor savings of $500,000 per year, since they did not need to hire as many employees. Employee turnover was reduced by 50%, which avoided hiring and training costs of $26,400 per year. And they reduced employee absenteeism by 40%, which saved $72,000 per year. In addition, employee personal savings were estimated to be $4,000 per year due to reduced commuting costs, parking, food, and clothing. So now that you've learned about the key elements of the Workplace 2.0 paradigm, you may be asking, okay, but what's the process for getting there? Where's the best place to start? So we want to introduce you to our second key framework for developing a hybrid workforce strategy. And we believe that all successful organizations start with leadership and culture. They are the umbrella which overhangs all success. Then, the fundamental business goals of operational productivity, recruiting and retaining talent, and maximizing financial results should inform all decisions and drive behavior. And to achieve these business goals, you must follow a sequential path, starting with workforce strategy, followed by workplace strategy and design, and then real estate strategy. Here it is again. Step 1 drives step 2, which leads naturally to step 3. And when workforce strategy is addressed first, it gives you the freedom to design your workplace with the confidence that you're basing the design and real estate strategy on meaningful information, but also that your real estate strategy won't have to adapt to a changing workforce strategy at some point down the road. You want to build the real estate strategy and the workplace strategy and design on solid rock, not shifting sand. So knowing this, it's important to begin by examining the critical requirements of a hybrid workforce strategy, being mindful that you will now be supporting workers who are at home one day and in the office another day. And we believe this is a key differentiator for Cresa. We don't know of anyone else who starts their real estate strategy by evaluating the critical requirements of a broader workforce strategy. So here's the checklist every organization should work through. We'll send an email with this list to all attendees, so no need to jot down every bullet right now. And if you'd like to have a conversation about your specific situation, please contact Steve or myself, or the Cresa advisor who invited you to the webinar. We enjoy these open dialogues and sharing what it is that we are seeing other organizations do. So the final question, the one from the very beginning of the webinar, is how do we transition? How should we evaluate all of those critical requirements to develop a successful and sustainable hybrid workforce strategy? Cresa has developed a roadmap that consists of 5 steps to methodically walk you through the process. It begins with awareness. Learn best practices. Understand the benefits and the challenges. Become aware of the process. In fact, you're doing that today. The next 3 steps, Cresa has combined into a workshop that's built on 3 phases. Phase 1 is discovery, that begins with a kickoff meeting where you build your team and establish goals. Then we conduct surveys and interviews to evaluate your organization in light of the critical requirements. Phase 2 is analysis. Here we identify any capability gaps that we found during discovery and determine the solutions to meet your goals. Phase 3 is delivery of an executive summary with recommendations to fill capability gaps, application of best practices to your specific situation, and a review and advice on your remote work policy. The workshop takes about 4 weeks, and is one of its major benefits, I should say, is that it really provides that structured, methodical process for leadership teams to have conversations about their future workforce strategy, and quite importantly, build consensus about the path forward. That enables clear and consistent communication to employees, and you now have the freedom to move forward in confidence that you're building your workplace design and real estate strategy on solid rock, not shifting sand. The 5th step of the roadmap is implementation of the plan. For this, Cresa offers a more robust blueprint plan, which includes everything from the workshop, but a deeper dive into discovery and analysis, followed by monitoring and feedback over a 60, 90, and 120-day period. So with that, let me offer a summary. The desire for freedom is changing where and when we work. As important as a shared central office is, this desire for freedom of choice demands that most organizations develop a hybrid workforce strategy. And to get there, transition is key. We are currently enduring the COVID-19 experience from a workforce perspective. But just over the horizon is unimpeded access to your shared office. And how you transition to that new hybrid work environment will determine how sustainable and competitive you will be. And finally, be sequential to be successful. Remember that it only makes sense to develop your workspace design and real estate strategy after you've evaluated the human component of your workforce strategy and all of the critical requirements that make it successful. Give yourself meaningful information to inform your decision making and build your strategies on solid rock, not shifting sand. Now, there's one last thought that we want to leave you with. I was in the Navy for 8 years, flying jets off of aircraft carriers. So I know that the Navy is an organization that runs on planning, training, and leadership, especially leadership. Similarly, implementing corporate programs, especially those that involve significant change, requires the same 3 elements because both the Navy and the private sector are organizations made up of people working together for larger goals. And it's critical to understand that people will mimic the behavior of their leaders, especially if they sense that failing to do so puts them at a disadvantage for their career opportunities and access to information. Therefore, leaders must model the behavior that they want to see from their employees. We're experiencing a time of dramatic change in the workforce and the workplace, and that change requires leadership to find the right hybrid workforce strategy that supports your people and makes you more competitive. So be thoughtful in your planning, train your people, and take the initiative to lead them well. Thank you for listening. Now, it looks like we've got 11 and a half minutes, so not too bad for some questions, for some Q&A. And what I want to do is bring back up, by the way, our email addresses are on the screen. If you found something that was interesting or you would like more information and you don't get it in our follow-up emails, please reach out to us or the Cresa advisor who invited you to the webinar today. So what I want to do is take a few questions and go over what we saw. Hold on just one moment. Okay, interestingly, So we did get some feedback from our question, as you'll recall, about what concerns do you have over the hybrid workforce strategy coming up just over the horizon. And one of the concerns was, what does the future of the office look like? Redesigning that space. That's certainly a big topic of conversation that we have, as you can imagine, at Cresa, a real estate advisory firm. And it's going to be very interesting to see how this shakes out long term. But it clearly looks like more space devoted for teamwork and collaboration. So when you're in the office, that's a big reason why you're there, is to see other people and work with other people in person. But we're also seeing very much an increase in the concept of hot desking. So people sharing seats and using software to help them find their seat for the day. That's two areas that we see a big change coming up. I'll tell you what, let's also take one of the questions. One of the questions is around how to make the home office more productive as well as safe, secure. I imagine they're talking cybersecurity and security information. Why don't you take that one, Steve?
I think great question. And when we look at the optimization of that home and office workspace, or the combination thereof, we want to make sure that we take care of the individual and the technology. So when we look at the individual, from ergonomic chairs to having the right docking station and dual monitors, good lighting, noise canceling headsets, something that gets overlooked is a dedicated space for work separate from your home activities, so that you can call that, hey, that's where I go to get my work done. And at the end of the day, whenever you call that, you're able to separate yourself from that. And with the home office and making that productivity on the individual, big believer in starting the day and setting a routine just as you would if you were in an office building. It may seem interesting and humorous for some, but really dress for work. When you come and you get up and you start your day dressing for work, it sets you up for a great day. As I mentioned earlier, keeping that dedicated workspace separate from your home space when possible. And we know for those apartment dwellers or condominium dwellers or folks that are in a loft or not in a full home, you can still dedicate a workspace, and you can get a desk that you can put into a certain area. That's your work desk. That's not where you go to do your gaming. It's not where you're there to even have lunch. You separate that. The other is human factor of getting away and taking breaks. Jason, it was kind of interesting in an interview we had a couple weeks ago where they said the biggest factor is I've got back-to-back meetings,
Yes.
and I can't catch my breath. Scheduling breaks in your day and getting outside, getting away, going when possible and safe to meet somebody for lunch. And as you would in an office, know when you're most productive, when you're most creative, and align your activities for your day. So when you plan your day, set it aside for, hey, I've got to churn this out. I'm going to be productive from 8 to 10 is my best time. And then when I need to get away and think and get creative, I'm going to take that time to separate that and go do that work.
Yeah.
The other is establishing boundaries, especially when you have other individuals working in the house with you, or you've got students that are home learning. Learn to set boundaries and say, hey, when I'm at work, please respect that and give me the space, and set it into your workday and know that at that time you're going to step back from it and do that. And the last, I'll just take a minute or so for the technology. Leverage and use your conferencing tools appropriately, and know when to email, when to have an instant message session, or when to do an instant meeting via collaboration in Zoom. The other are use good tools. Don't skimp on lighting. Don't skimp on Jason uses a USB headset that's wireless. I use a speakerphone. Upgrade your technology, upgrade your lighting. Jason uses actually a great light bar on his laptop that creates a very useful workspace. And get an ergonomic chair, and if you can get a standing desk, it helps break up the day. So get the
Well,
best tools and technologies
and I
for
think
that.
the key for organizations is to provide the stipend to allow employees
Mm,
to choose what they want. I think that's
very
really
much.
important, because otherwise, if they're sort of issued Mark One motto, something we'd say in the Navy, standard issue stuff, you're just not providing that sense of freedom. You're not tapping into that, and that's what creates employee engagement, which lead to all those other positive things that we saw on the list that I
Mm,
spelled out earlier. But another comment that came in was around one of the concerns of the hybrid workforce was scheduling multiple
mhm,
profiles so as to optimize efficiencies in the office. And by the way, this same person said that one of the things that they are doing is they're running pilots in
mhm,
some of their smaller offices, which is exactly what we would recommend an organization do, is they go down that roadmap of
mhm,
the hybrid workforce strategy. But I wanted to address the scheduling of multiple profiles so as to optimize efficiencies in the office, and there's a twofold issue
mhm.
there. One is the actual physical scheduling of bodies in the building or bodies in the seat. But the other is understanding who is making the decisions around where people are working when. Is that at the CEO level, all the way at the top for every person in the organization, which of course would be absurd. But I'm making the point is, how far down is that decision made? Is it all the way down to the squad leader level or the team leader level? Or is it higher than that? And I think a great tip for everyone to employ as they go through this is, you really do need to have an understanding of where your people are when, as a general rule, where they're scheduled to be. And we call that hybridity mapping,
Mhm.
is a term for that. Okay, so you're mapping out Bill, Suzanne, Mary, and this team are all going to be at home this day, or they're going to be in the office in this particular neighborhood another day or half of the day, um, so that you can understand where your workforce is going to be, and also have good communication about where people are when, so as to avoid some of those issues that I think many organizations are going to face, which is this feeling of disparity between some of the folks who are remote most of the time and some of the folks who are in the office most of the time. So you've got to map that out, know where people are, and talk about it consistently in order to reduce those fears of the people who are perhaps feeling they're in a disadvantaged position.
Yeah, and Jason, I'll just add a little bit to that. As we do this, I'll avoid the consultant speak of time and motion studies and analytics, but you're getting into really mapping out, as Jason said, what they're working on, who you're working with, whether it's within your team or across teams, how often and what is that frequency, what information do you need access to, and as we look at workflows, work items, and process, it's really an analysis of and a measuring of, so that you can build a plan, build a model, and map it out. And then don't ever forget, as you do it, it's not a one and done. You're going to do it again 3 months later and 6 months later to really look at driving that efficiency and optimization of who's working on what, when, and how often, and who they're working on it with, because that will then flow right back into that scheduling tool and that mapping tool of where do you need to be, and do we need team A and team B sitting in the same work area?
Yes.
We're in the same conference room.
Well, I got one more note from the same person that said, I think this is interesting. I feel like it needs, just quoting, I feel like it needs to be some type of reservation system based on something similar to mileage status, so that you have the ability to reserve up until a certain time, and then the office goes into a general pool. So I think that's fascinating. There's going to be a number of creative, innovative, ingenious systems that are set up. But one thing that I would mention is, there are software applications out there that I think are going to be very, very important. Cresa has a relationship with a company called GoSpaces as one example. There are others that are out there in the market for folks to consider, but these are going to be very important to have right on your phone, so that you as an employee can understand, can have confidence in, okay, if I'm coming to the office, am I going to get a seat and how does this work? And you're not distracted by that. So thank you very much for those comments, by the way, the questions and comments.
Very good.
Well, we are right here to the top of the hour, so we'll shut it down here now. Look for an email from us with a short survey, also with a follow-up with a recording of the webinar if you'd like to share that with anyone who was not able to join. And we'd love to have a conversation with you. We talk shop all the time with clients of our firm and companies who are not, organizations who are not clients, to trade ideas. So thank you again for joining us. Take care.
Thanks all. Have a great day.